firmly believe, Canada can be the world leader in innovation. And what's the biggest advantage Canada has right now, besides our awesome leadership in technologies like AI and quantum? Our biggest brand attribute on the planet on a relative basis right now is trust. And trust matters. When big tech is not trusted out of the United States, and it's not trusted out of China, and it's not, can we be the place where trust is built right into technology?
Hello. I'm so excited today because I have the Chris Albinson joining us on the AfternoonT podcast. And Chris, before we get into the nitty gritty and all the fun stuff, let me just set this up, if you please. Chris Albinson is the president and CEO of Communitech, co-founder and managing director of the Breakaway Growth Fund, and visionary founder, I do mean this, and past chairperson of the C100. Albinson has been an early investor in impactful companies, including Pinterest, DocuSign, Newbridge Networks, and Juniper Networks. Chris is a mentor and/or advisor for Techstars, Garage Capital, SAS North, and the Canadian Innovation Exchange. Earlier in his career, Chris was general partner at JP Morgan Partners and earned an MBA from the Ivy Business School. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me some afternoon tea. Excited for the conversation.
Well, you did say you're in a coffee shop in Ottawa, and I've got my tea, so I hope at least you got something warm to keep you happy there.
I had hot toddies last night. It's a little cool and a little rainy in Ottawa today.
I would imagine it would be. I won't flip over and to see, to show you the sunshine, and actually to know that Musk is speaking right now, just a block away. So I'm sure we're going to hear some very interesting / nutty things about Twitter and all that, because he has the platform, but this is your platform. So, there's one quote that I love that I read, there's a lot of great content I can read about you, Chris, but one quote I loved was that you said, "Snow and solitude make for great thinking time." Very Canadian. Why is that so?
Well, it was a reference to last February, and sort of a reference to former Prime Minister Trudeau, the first when he did his proverbial walk in the snow to kind of figure out what he wanted to do. And I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing Canadian founders for the last 12 years and see their growth, and Toby and Shopify and others that were just absolutely awesome. After being 20 years in the Valley, I was at my cottage in February walking in the snow and kind of thinking about what was next, and got a text message from one founder, and then noticed a couple of voicemails. And so Michael Litt from Vidyard and Toby from Shopify and Dex DeSilva from Lightspeed saying, "Hey man, you wrote this crazy blog post about how Canada has this opportunity to be the leader in world innovation. Why don't you come home and help us do it?" And combination of the quietness of the snow and the crunch of it underneath my feet, and a couple text messages and a voicemail, like they probably had me at come home, to be honest. But thrilled to be back a year now.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I just imagine that Canadian identity. Unfortunately, here it's usually puddles and splashing in Vancouver instead. But that is so cool. Well, Communitech, I mean, legendary organization. Tell me about the organization and your role with it.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool, special place. It was founded by founders for founders 25 years ago. So that folks like Tom Jenkins, the founder of OpenText, and others coming together saying, "Hey, look, if we're going to have success, we need to work together." And that's really the core ethos and the power of the thing. We've now grown pretty considerably. So we serve 1,600 founders coast to coast to coast. And do everything from early stage, idea to, early company formation through scale up, and just now launched what we call the True North list, which is the 174 companies that are the best in the world that happen to be Canadian, and knitting them together. So at scale companies so that they have success. And really leveraging their networks, their expertise, big focus on peer learning and peer support. But we do things on the talent side in terms of attracting talent to Canada. So just a funny story, during the middle of the pandemic, when no one was in Times Square and you could buy a billboard for almost nothing, which is kind of crazy to think about. We bought a billboard and said, "Hey, got H-1B problems, and you want to build something big and awesome for humanity, come to Canada." And that billboard got 45 million media impressions through the United States, and the U.S. Congress at hearings on little old Communitech, trying to pull in international talent from the U.S. to Canada. So we do a lot of fun things at Communitech.
That's incredible. I love that. Well, you shared that you're in Ottawa because you got some, good news for the continued success around Communitech. Did you want to share that?
Yeah, no, happy to do it. One of the biggest challenges, back when I had my 5 startups, going back 40 years, is Canada is a great place in terms of building awesome startups. We do a terrible job of buying our own stuff. And I think when we came through the pandemic, there was this realization that, we couldn't get mass ship from Minnesota. We need to actually be a little bit more self-reliant. And to do that, we need to use Canadian innovation to solve Canadian problems. And, we were able to kind of say, hey, look, if you look at it on the buy side, one of the challenges is not that they don't want to buy Canadian solutions. It's just that the IBM rep and the Cisco rep, are standing in front of the person making the decision and have been for 5 years. And then they kind of look out at 17,000 awesome venture-backed startups we have in the country, and they just don't know where to start. So it's like, hey, if we could bring companies that are objectively in the 1% highest performing private companies on the planet that happen to be Canadian, that you can buy from with as much confidence or more confidence than you're buying from IBM or Cisco, that would be a cool thing. And so we decided to attack healthcare first as a vertical. We spend about $40 billion every year across the 27 most innovative hospitals in the country. We said, look, we know you want to buy Canadian solutions. Tell us what the common problems are that you have. We'll go find the companies, get them right in front of you, get their solutions into production, and then celebrate the hell out of that to the 2,000 hospitals across the country. And having successfully proven that we could do that, they said, hey, what about cities? What about municipalities? What about D&D? What about CSIS? And so we built the deepest data layer in the country on the 17,000 venture-backed startups, and basically teeing that right up for procurement. And it was really great to see the federal government saying, hey, go do more of that.
Well, you're creating markets, you're creating a local market, and well, that's just a win-win. Well, you know what, to continue raising that flag, which I'm so proud of, and clearly can see from the back you are too. You're going to say True North Strong. I'll say from sea to shining sea. But we're talking about the same thing here. Now, I am very proud to be a member of a group that you helped found, which is the C100. I like to refer to it as a whole bunch of superly amazing hoity-toity people plus me. But can you tell me about the creation story of the C100? What was behind that?
Yeah, so just to kind of put some time around it, it was 2008. So Nortel had gone bankrupt, BlackBerry had gone down. There was basically no venture capital in the country at all. And I was at an event with our Consul General, Stu Beck, in Palo Alto. And, there was basically this conversation about how innovation was dying, right in front of our eyes. And talking to Canadian founders that, their companies were shutting down left and right. They were running out of money. And, I think we all know the story of, the US catches a cold, Canada catches the flu. Well, in 2008, the US had the flu. And so we're like, man, that's awful. And then Stu Beck, put his hand on my shoulder and Anthony Lee's shoulder and said, hey guys, can you help me fix this? And I had the pleasure of going to India with Thai, which is the Indian diaspora group that started in Silicon Valley about 10 years prior to that, in 1998. And I was just amazed about how ideas and capital and people flowed back and forth between India and the Valley. And Anthony had done something similar with the Israelis, an organization called CICC. And we just didn't know, if Canada or Canadians would actually care. But there's an expression in the Valley: if you're going to fail, fail fast. So this is pre-LinkedIn also. So like we all knew a couple of Canadians, but didn't know exactly who they are or where they were. We invited 50 people to show up to the founding of this organization. 85 came, and we said, hey, look, for the pleasure of having the passport and everything that's meant to you and your family and your life, like, Canada needs you, and it's time to step up and time to give back and help Canadian founders have success. And so 84 of the 85 wrote $1,000 check that night to
Amazing.
get the organization off the ground. So that was to Canadians Care. Well, we'll ask them to write a check for the pleasure of giving up their time and their expertise. We want you to give us some money to get it going. And they did it. So it was a great sign, and just amazing to kind of think back now, 12 years later, and the $75 billion that those startups that we've worked with have raised, and in companies like Shopify. I was in the meeting in San Francisco when a U.S. venture capitalist said you could never build a company to $1 billion in revenue to our best entrepreneurs, and told them just to give it up and come to the Valley or go to New York. And the awesome thing was all of those entrepreneurs basically got out of their seats and said, F you, we're going to go do it. And then for Toby and Harley to build a company to $1 billion in revenue faster than any company before or since on the planet, we're going to go get it done. And it's exciting.
That's awesome. Well, so many amazing companies came out of 2008 too. It's, it's that kind of that crisis, like people, that was a theme I've actually caught from speaking with people on the podcast, is 2008 is a year of creation. And I'm really pleased to hear that the creation of the C100 came out of that too. And if you look, I mean, those who aren't too aware of the organization, you really should look at the pride that's been created, but also, like you said, the capital flows, the opportunities that are created, the goodwill that's created. But if you just look at some of the companies who went through like 48 hours in the Valley, it's just, it's pretty incredible. It's almost a who's who. And then to see a lot of those leaders come back and pay it forward after, and you see them, because I've been really lucky. Before I was a member of the C100, I actually went down to the 48 hours in the Valley just as an observer, and was just blown away by the kind willingness to help. That's the thing that, because I've talked to lots of people in the States, and like, okay, what's in it for me? There was zero of that. That was, what can I do for you? And, the fact that you're able to create that magic, the little northern pixie dust is just incredible. Well, what I'm just going to ask you, can you share any like special event or activity or something that you've done within the C100 that made you go, wow, this really is an incredible group?
It was probably the second year in. We're doing what was really sort of our big formal launch, and this was post LinkedIn 2010. And then the cool thing we found out was there was actually a Canadian on the C-suite of every NASDAQ 100 company. So the influence paths, I thought there were 7 of us that were venture capitalists in the Valley that were Canadian. It turns out there was 52 of us. So it's really cool that this little tool called LinkedIn. And to your point, Garrett Camp was from Calgary, was founding Uber around that time frame. Stuart was founding Slack at that time. Michelle Zatlin was founding Cloudflare at that time. All of these companies now worth in the tens of billions of dollars. So there were both, really good venture capitalists, great founders that were, building great companies in the Valley, and then also great venture capitalists, and you could basically put them all together in this really trusted space. And this is what we were very fortunate to have Vish Mitra, who's the founder and chairman of TIE, be on our advisory board early on, and honestly gave us the playbook, as did Shuli Gully from CICC, and allowed us to really move fast. But to answer your question, the cool moment was we had all those people in the room, all very accomplished, right? And about 15 minutes into the meeting, Sean Pruden from Victoria stood on a chair. So to give you some context, Sean Pruden was 25 years at Apple, runs the App Store for Apple worldwide, has basically launched any product that matters for Apple. You can't think of more impactful, accomplished executive from a Silicon Valley point of view. And she starts singing the national anthem.
Love it.
And we all joined in, and tears were flowing down. It was like, damn it, like, we're gonna like go build some awesome stuff for humanity and do it together and support each other. And that was a pretty special moment for me.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, you're talking about the power of the 11th province, okay? As we know in John Stackhouse's book, Planet Canada, How Our Expats Are Shaping the Future. I assume you've read this book because I've seen suggestions around it. Why is this such an influential book?
I think John really thoughtfully, and RBC was a great partner of ours at C100, and Dave McKay, is a really interesting leader for our Canadian bank. I think he's the only engineer who's CEO of a large Canadian bank, and he kind of got tech. Friends with Tim Cook, sat on the board of Visa. Understood that stepping into that role at RBC was both a really great privilege and opportunity for him in his career. But he asked me to pull a dinner together in Silicon Valley the day before he stepped in that CEO seat, and said, "Look, can you bring the smartest Canadians in the Valley together?" And I said, like, "Well, Dave, you're running this multi-billion-dollar organization. Like, what the heck?" And he said, like, "I'm worried that it's going to be gone in my tenure, right? And I need to understand sort of the speed of innovation and the impact of it." So I just think he's a really special leader. I think one of the reasons why he's got Stackhouse on his team over there.
Yep.
And John, who came from the Globe, really talented writer, was sort of along that journey with us, and he was just blown away, I think, as all of us were the power of this community, the impact of it, the success we were having, and then the willingness to connect and work together, and what that benefit really could be for Canada. And so was really pleased to work on that book with John. And it's a really fun read for those that haven't read it, so I highly encourage you to do it. And the fact that I'm in a chapter, as my mom says too, before James Cameron. She's like, "How the heck did you get 2 chapters before James Cameron? What's that about?" I said, "I have no idea."
Amazing.
But yeah, no, it's a great read. And the Israelis have figured this out before us, as did
Yep.
the Indians. And the cool thing from my perspective is, just to your point, how willing Canadians are to help each other out, to have global success. It's really fun to be involved in.
Oh, it's awesome. And, you talk about the chapter. I mean, there's a whole chapter dedicated to the C100 and the work that you've done. And it really is an amazing read. And I challenge, I honor, I say, hey, you know what? Go buy the book, because we deserve to have this type of literature gathered that isn't, just pure intellectual. It's actually good reading, and good business reading too, about the power of what we can do together.
John's a great storyteller, so it's a fun read.
Oh, definitely. Well, we talked a little bit of hockey beforehand. I'm a parent of 2 teen hockey players. My daughter and son both play. And the second I saw the name of the growth fund, the Breakaway Growth Fund, I figured there's got to be a little hockey flavor in there. Is the name? Is it a hockey? I mean, we got the hockey stick, and now we got the Breakaway. Is that how you came up with the name?
Yeah, no, 100%. And it actually kind of connects to another kind of fun story, if I could share. Is
please.
I was at the Salt Lake Games in 2002, and I was really lucky to be at that gold medal match when the Canadian women beat the American women. Our first gold medal in hockey in 50 years, just to remember. And the excitement for our women, it was like, honestly, the best hockey game I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen some good ones, but it was just amazing, because if you remember, our Canadian women hadn't beat the Americans, I think, in 3 years. In 3 years, coming into the most important game, ever on their home ice, right? So that was pretty fun to see live. And then really the next day was the most interesting thing, which is it was a pretty intimate game. So it was post 9/11, and so you actually, not too many people were able to go, but if you went, you could actually mix in the village with the athletes. And really? So I remember talking to like our bobsledders and our downhillers and our curlers, and they're like, it was really cool the women won the night before, but there was just like, why isn't Canada the best in the world? Like, we should be the best in the world. And like, there was like this moment, finally, like, Canada wants to win. And there was Kathy Priestner, as a Canadian we don't talk nearly enough about, was there also. She was a silver medalist in speed skating, but she was on the back in, I think, Munich, but she was there on the Olympic committee. And she went a step further. She said, like, not only why are we not the best in the world, but why are we not? And I'm not going to do her work justice, but she basically said, look, you're never going to be the best in the world by doing participation. For those of us that are old enough to remember the flexed arm hang and how painful that thing was. But And she said, hey, like you got to use objective data to find the athletes that have the probability of success and then put them together, in these high performance centers. And if you do all of those things and get the stuff that's in their way out of their way, they're going to have success. And so Kathy Priestner was the architect of On the Podium. And, the reason why we went from fourth quartile performance in every Olympics before Vancouver to first quartile performance. And, I owe her, I think all Canadians owe her a debt of thanks, because she said, we're going to do a very un-Canadian thing. We're going to go win on the global stage, and that's what we should be doing. And we're now doing that in innovation, which is really fun to see too.
No, I love that. I mean, it's okay to win, and we should be proud of winning. Because I remember that. I mean, the Olympics in Vancouver, for example. I mean, it was. I live in Yaletown, or I lived in Yaletown at the time. Just the party, the pride, the excitement of the entire thing, and the fact that we were winning, is amazing. Well, you've touched the Olympics, you've got it. And this was actually one of my most interesting looking into facts about you when I was doing a little bit of research, was that your father, I got to talk about this because I think this is super interesting. Okay. So your father is a professor of sports psychology at Queen's University, the co-author of the Mental Game Plan, and spent a decade coaching Canadian Olympians, I assuming how to mentally prepare to win. How did this influence your sense of competition and fair play?
That's an awesome question. I mean, dad's been a huge influence on my life. I remember being a teenager. You've got teenagers, so anything you say to your teenagers as a dad, it's like, oh my God, the guy's just kooky as all get out. And he was like talking about breathing and mental preparation, and visualization. And this is before, everyone, well, at least as a teenager, I thought he was absolutely crazy. But the interesting thing, like his whole work was like, the difference between the number 1 athlete in the world in their sport and the number 12 or the number 15 is really not athletic. 9 times out of 10, it's really about how they mentally prepare themselves, for those big moments. And so, some of that stuff, even though I said he was crazy, actually kind of sunk in. And, this idea of, Canadians can go and compete on the world stage and be the best in the world. So that ambition, if you will, and let's go out and explore the world, because he went to every Olympics from Munich all the way to LA. So going all over the world and helping our Olympic team, but also like the thoughtfulness of like what's the work that you have to put in to have that level of success, and it just doesn't happen. And so I keep a copy of his book actually on my bookshelf to this day. It's not as good reading. Stackhouse, he's a professor, so he's not a storyteller. But it's I think you can still get it on Amazon. It's worth grabbing. It was the first text on mental prep in sport, and so really he's the father of that field, and something that he can be very proud of and should be.
Amazing. And the father of Chris Albinson. So we're the father of many great things, I suppose we can say here then. It's kind of funny because I was watching a documentary. I you don't look at me, you probably think that, but I'm a big skateboard fan too. Okay. And I was watching a documentary, or it was a TED Talk actually, from Rodney Mullen. What he was talking about, because he was such he never lost, is you start competing at one point and it's not about winning, it's about not losing. And that mental side of it. I mean, I'm to be honest, I'm just blah-blahing because I was just thinking about it when you're saying it. I wonder at what stage is it that you become so good? Like, you've got the Shopifys and all that it's not about competing anymore. It's just not about not losing. And do you think maybe that was what, maybe some of that was with Nortel, or some of that was with, BlackBerry, or, maybe it was just the fact that they didn't innovate too. But you know what? I'm just blah-blahing here. I'm just kind of into the conversation myself.
I think the analogies are crazy and often, right? And are real, right? So if you look at the best performing companies on the planet, they're still founder led. They're still founder driven. And whether or not you talked about Apple when Tim was took over, and the difference between, or when Scully took over than when Steve was running it, and the level of innovation and interesting things that came out of it. The same thing with Shopify, being led by Toby. And so you can say, like, these are very unique humans that want to compete on the world stage and are driven to build big things that are highly competitive. You said that Elon's in the building, next door, but
Mhm.
I've often said, and I say this with full admission of being, having had 5 startups myself, like the difference between being an entrepreneur and crazy is a very thin line, and we often cross over it. But you got to have a little bit of ability to go believe things that
Mhm.
on the face of them, shouldn't be believed, and have that conviction.
Oh, that is so correct. I mean, I always say there's those who support the company who are great, at doing it, but they're never like we hire, for example, Jose, he's awesome. We actually hired him as the CEO of our company, just because he's so good at the details. He's so good at, the stuff that I'm not good at. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure he would have founded the company, because I think you have to have that vision of, hey, you know what? I'm not going to worry about failing. I'm not going to worry about any of that stuff. I'm just going to do it. And if I fail, I'll do it again. It's a
Right.
very different mentality. Maybe I need your dad and the breathing habits too, with me. That'd be helpful. That would definitely be helpful. Well, you know what? One thing that I thought was super interesting is that you recently brought the TSX to Waterloo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you tell me about that? And also, is it much of a different experience? Because I saw you also did it in 2012 when you rang the bell at the TSX with the C100.
Mm-hmm.
Was it different at all?
It was, in a pretty important way. So I'll tell you a little bit of a backstory. So John Baker's founder of DTL, one of our True North companies, highest performing companies in the country, was getting ready for his IPO, and we had a quick conversation before the IPO, and he said, look, I don't think I'm even going to go. And this was like when COVID was like complete lockdown. And I'm saying, John, like, you've built this company for 20 years. You're about to take it public. Like, it was heartbreaking to me that he didn't have that moment with his team to celebrate. I still have on my desk when we took Newbridge public on the New York Stock Exchange, and our flags on the outside and the poles wrapped. It was Christmas time, and I've got the picture when I took my other company, Digital Island, public, and the team all together. NASDAQ ringing the bell, and this is a pretty magic moment, and we're celebrating, and it just didn't happen for him because of COVID. And then we were talking to the TSX about becoming a partner with us on True North, and really thrilled that they were really excited by doing that and getting behind Canada's best companies, and thrilled to have them as a partner. And I said, I got a crazy idea for you. Like, if you've seen these market opens, as I had, to your point, when we did the TSX Open in Toronto, it's a really nice facility. It's a really fun, event to go to. But then you kind of realize it's a green screen, with some confetti machines, with all the people you care about. That's what it is, both for the NASDAQ and for the TSX. And I said, why not move the opening and come to Waterloo? Our companies had just raised $3.2 billion in 14 months. That's more than the previous 14 years combined.
A little bit of change.
We had these amazing companies that were growing really strongly and having huge impact, and really thrilled to kind of celebrate them. And for John and his team that had kind of missed that opportunity earlier because of COVID, it's like nothing better than having, your hometown there, have him, open the market, have all these other founders behind him, and kind of celebrating, his success and all of the success. And so, to the first thing the TSX said, oh, no, we can't do that. Like, that's not going to happen. I said, I don't know. It's a green screen. Like, put it on a truck. And say, well, like market opening stuff. Well, do it on a Monday, and you can move the stuff, on a Sunday. We'll have it all set up Monday morning. We'll put it back on the truck, and we'll be back in Toronto by Tuesday, no problem. To their credit, they said, you know what, like, why not? Like, let's go get behind these awesome founders and celebrate the heck out of them. And the only funny thing is, actually was happened right in the space right behind me, and we had this big screen, and like all the founders signed the wall, which was pretty awesome. And the only funny thing is the TSX was like, hey, where did you guys get those confetti cannons? Your confetti cannons are bigger than ours. That was pretty awesome.
It's a Waterloo thing. It's a Waterloo thing.
Like we build stuff, like, if you're going to build stuff, build it big.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I really love that. Well, what again, I really enjoy doing a lot of the research into figuring out some good questions for you. And one article that I read was a quote that you said that Canadian AI community will not be building killer robots. Why
Mm.
do you believe that? I mean, we're famous for our AI. Why not killer robots? Thank God.
Yeah, I think we're in an interesting moment. For the first time in 25 years since the crown of global innovation moved from Boston, moved to Silicon Valley, it's moving again for the first time.
Mhm.
And it's unclear where it's going to go. Is it New York? Is it Singapore? Is it Berlin? But I firmly believe, Canada can be the world leader in innovation.
Mhm.
And one of the interesting things about why the Valley won versus Boston back in the mid 90s is they didn't do it by being Boston. They did it by being different. And I think Canada wins also not by trying to be Silicon Valley, but doing it our own way. And what's the biggest advantage Canada has right now, besides our awesome leadership in technologies like AI and quantum, and the awesome companies that we've got, and the awesome talent and universities we produce? Our biggest brand attribute on the planet on a relative basis right now is trust. And trust matters. When
Mhm.
big tech is not trusted out of the United States, and it's not trusted out of China, and it's not, can we be the place where trust is built right into technology? And so I didn't invent this. Actually, the ClearPath robotics guys, in 2014, did a manifesto and said, like, we will not build anything that hurts humanity. And so, like, a little bit tongue in cheek, like, it's not just AI, it's robotics and all the technology that we're working on. If we can build stuff that's trusted and is good for humanity, I think that's an advantage for us, and allow our companies to grow. And so it's awesome to see like Jack at Clio out there in Vancouver,
Mhm.
leaning into that as much as Martin Bashiri is at Applyboard. And you just go across the country, Mike Litt at Vidyard, all of these awesome founders realizing that being Canadian and building a Canadian company where trust is core to it is an advantage right now, and leaning all the way in, which is awesome.
Completely. I just want to give you a quick exclamation on that thought of trust, because before, unfortunately, COVID killed this product that we were building, which was actually a facial recognition platform for analytics at events. And it was actually going really, really well until, events and COVID. But we went down to Seattle. The product owner and I went down to Seattle, gave a presentation of, what we're building in front of 200 people. And the one question one of the fellows said from Seattle was, okay, what about the China question? And we're like, well, the China question. So I assume you mean, are we going to be doing stuff with the data? Is there something that you need to be trusted? And Amber, who is the product owner, said, look, this is a Canadian solution. Wouldn't you trust us over any of those ones? And everyone clapped. Everyone clapped. And just, it made me think, holy crap, that trust is so important that if we can brand and bottle that, just like what you said, there is something incredibly powerful there. And just wow. I mean, honestly, when you said that, it made me just kind of think back, going, you are bang on about that. That trust is important. I'd say our good immigration policies is also important in that.
100%.
But trust is everything, especially in products that might have multiple uses, or could potentially have multiple uses. Well, Chris, this is so much fun. I'm having such a blast. But I have two questions that I ask at every single one of our episodes here. Because again, the theme here is to talk to wonderful entrepreneurs like yourself in order to prepare that next generation of startups. So let me just ask you first, can you share one piece of advice to help a younger Canadian founder?
I think the big thing is surround yourself with what you want to be. I was really fortunate to be mentored by Terry Matthews. As far as I know, the only Canadian entrepreneur who built a company to $1 billion in revenue 3 times over. Really lucky to have him as a friend and a mentor to this day. Met him in my early 20s. So I think everyone talks about mentorship and support and those peer-to-peer groups, which are good and important, but to be thoughtful about curating that, to actually go out and find the people that are what you want to be and get them close to you. I think that's that was a lesson.
And that is a fantastic lesson, I got to say. And well, I have one more, and you've already mentioned
Sure.
so many great players in the Canadian field. We've got Dax, we've got Toby, we've got all these people that I've got nothing but like awe for. But can you name, maybe without naming those two, because everyone knows
Sure.
those names? Can you name or share the name of a Canadian entrepreneur or founder that you look up to?
One of my I talked a little bit about Terry, but one of my favorite stories, just to share with you, because it's not as well known, and we should know these names, to your point, is Judy Hess, the founder of Copperleaf in BC.
Yep.
Judy got $4 million. Almost nobody would give her money, to be clear, when she was starting her company. The only Indigenous venture capitalist in the country was the person who wrote that check and believed in Judy. And she never took a dime after that. I don't think she even used the $4 million, and just took her company public for $1.1 billion last year. It is singly the most successful by multiple investment, by a founder and return in the country's history. And nobody knows Judy Hess, and nobody talks about Copperleaf. So I think she's just amazing. She's tenacious. She found a problem, and she just wouldn't stop until she fixed the problem. And she's just an amazing founder.
Thank you for sharing that one, because that's awesome. And I agree. I mean, we're really proud of what Copperleaf does out here. And one of the challenges they have is they're solving really big problems, but they're kind of boring problems. But there's a good lesson there, is that boring problems could be really profitable. Like,
amazing, right?
Really profitable. Well, hey, Chris, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today. I know you're busy seeing the world, making a difference for all of us. And I'll salute you for that too. Thank you for making a difference for all of us Canadians. It's been nothing but fantastic, and I look forward to continuing with the C100 and with you and just watching your journey and how much you help other people be better people.
Well, I think that the cool lesson, and this is the lesson of Waterloo. So our former Governor General, David Johnson, as I was taking on the role, I was lucky to have a conversation with him as I was thinking about it. And he said, the interesting thing that you learn working, in Canada and coming from the Waterloo region, which is Mennonite country, is if you want to build a big barn, you got to bring everyone together to do it. And it's just a lovely metaphor, and it's really fun to kind of build a big barn, and that's what we're doing.
Let's keep building that barn. Multiple stages from sea to shining sea. We do that, Chris. Well, thank you so very much.